Jarecki, and I am the Dirk. It is so nice to be in with you guys on a Friday morning. We are talking about sports and talking about life as always on the Jerk. It is a great day. NBA draft was last night. It went as expected for the most part. A few surprises. Paul George is still in Indiana. Jimmy Butler got moved. Lonzo Ball to the Lakers. Markelle Fultz to the 76ers. The Boston Celtics took Jason Tatum. I would have preferred they took Josh Jackson. But regardless, it was a great night in the NBA last night. So, here's my big takeaway. Boston did good, LA did better, and the Minnesota Timberwolves won the draft last night. I said yesterday, I would prefer Josh Jackson over Jason Tatum because I believe Josh Jackson would be the guy to make LeBron's life the most difficult heading into the Eastern Conference Finals for the Boston Celtics. And I believed Jackson could score at a similar rate to Tatum. However, Tatum is the more polished scorer coming into the NBA. He's younger, he's less developed than Jackson, which is a plus, and he will now play a lot of minutes in the regular season and develop into a real second option behind Isaiah Thomas. And I think this Celtics team, by the time we get to the playoffs, Brad Stevens gets a hold of Jason Tatum, figures out how to coach this team, one of the best lineups. Brad Stevens, one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to that stuff. And I think Boston, by the time we get to the playoffs, with Isaiah Thomas as their number one, Jason Tatum as a guy that can break down the defense and create his own shot, he's going to be their number two, I believe, by the time we get to the playoffs. Avery Bradley, their third option, 17 points a game. We don't know if they're going to get Gordon Hayward coming over from Utah. Horford's going to most likely still going to be there. Marcus Smart can be a defensive role player. Jaylen Brown coming off the bench. Crowder is young. This Boston team, I believe, now with the addition of Jason Tatum and a year more of Jaylen Brown, I believe this Boston team will go 6 or 7 with a Cleveland team that looks like it only has a year left of LeBron James. Boston did well. I think LA did better. You heard me list all those role players for Boston, all those solid players, and still Cleveland with no bench, 2 injury-prone stars, and LeBron James getting older will almost certainly beat them in a tough series. Stars have proven to win in this league. That's why LA getting Lonzo Ball is such a big win for that city. And you know what the best kind of star is in the NBA? The kind of star that other stars want to play with. Lonzo Ball's entire game is predicated on making other people better. He'll do that for Paul George, either this year or next year. It will attract other stars as the years go on. It's one of LeBron James's biggest strengths over the years. It's why veterans are willing to take less to play with him, and it will be Lonzo's biggest strength throughout his career. He's a pass-first guy, not a score-first guy, but he has the ability to score. Even better for Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson, LaVar Ball turned his son into the most discussed college basketball player that I can remember in my lifetime, and that's a big deal in LA. LaVar Ball creates the best kind of controversy. Hardly any of what he says is actually offensive. Most of it's bananas, but all of it gets you talking, all of it gets you worked up, and now LaVar Ball's name is directly attached to the Lakers. And by the way, folks, don't listen to anybody that tells you life is going to be harder for Lonzo Ball in the NBA because of his dad's comments. Listen, NBA players are not NFL players. They're not going to try to take your head off the first game. NBA players, for the most part, buddy. There's no physicality until deep in the playoffs. And when they get their shots, they're happy. And I promise you, as soon as the Lakers players figure out Lonzo gets them 5 more shots a game, they'll be wearing Big Baller brand. They'll have Lonzo's back, and everything will be hunky-dory, as it usually is in the big friendship circle that is the NBA. Now, we haven't heard much about Paul George. Those rumors have stalled a bit, but look out today. Paul George was spotted yesterday with moving trucks in his driveway. Whatever that means, you can speculate on that. I don't want to speculate too much. Honestly, he could have just been being proactive about selling that house, knowing that he'll be out of Indiana next year. That would have been a smart financial move by Paul George. We don't know yet. What we do know, Paul George had moving trucks in his driveway yesterday, and he wants to be a Laker, and he told the Indiana Pacers, I'm out after this year. And I think if he isn't a Laker this year, I think he sees what Lonzo does this year, and I think he'll be very encouraged about the situation heading into next year. The Lakers did great in the draft because they stuck to their Showtime identity, drafting who I think is the 8th biggest star in basketball already. And I think they got a star Lonzo Ball that makes other stars better. But the big winner in the draft to me has to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's give Scott Layden, GM for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Tom Thibodeau, coach of the Timberwolves, let's give them both a ton of credit for swooping in and creating the steal of the draft. They gave up a 7th overall in last night's draft. They gave up Chris Dunn, a guy that didn't pan out as expected last year. And they gave up Zach LaVine, who's a fine player, but who's better in a dunk contest than he is in an actual game. They gave up that for Jimmy Butler, a developed superstar whose game got better as a result of Tom Thibodeau's coaching early in his career. And now Minnesota suddenly has a big three. Karl Anthony Towns, who's the best big man in the country in my opinion. Andrew Wiggins, a 25-point-a-game scorer. Jimmy Butler, a 25-point-a-game scorer and a real defender in Thibodeau's system. And Ricky Rubio is a classic point guard who will get those guys the ball. This Minnesota team just went from the high school girl that was cute but had dorky glasses to what the hell, when did Sarah get so hot? 3 guys who will average 25 a game, and none of their games really steps on each other's toes. And I think the most underrated part of this deal, Jimmy Butler grew up under Tom Thibodeau. He was influenced by the Tom Thibodeau style of defense. And Thibodeau had trouble getting those young guys in Minnesota last year to buy into his defensive system. I think Butler comes in. He's got that ego. He's got that swag of a bona fide star in the NBA. And he can tell the rest of these guys, hey, we play real defense. We listen to this guy. We can really do something in the playoffs. Minnesota is the regular season team to watch next year. I think they make either the 7th or the 8th seed in the playoffs, possibly higher. I think this team probably needs a year to gel, but I think going forward, Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jimmy Butler, that's a real big three up in Minnesota. So, congratulations to the GM, Scott Layden. Congratulations to Tom Thibodeau. Congratulations to the Lakers and LaVar Ball and Lonzo Ball. And I think the Celtics did well. I think the Celtics did well with Jason Tatum. I think he can be a poor man's Paul George for them as he develops, although he doesn't play the defense that Paul George does, but he's only 19. That's what, if you're a Lakers fan right now, that's what you can be encouraged about. Jason Tatum is only 19 years old. He's got a great isolation game. He could create his own shot. He doesn't defend, but that can be developed, especially with somebody that has a 7-foot wingspan like Jason Tatum. I do think, obviously, most of us knew that the 76ers were going to pick Markelle Fultz last night. And I do think that's what they needed. They needed a guy that could spot up shoot, a guy that could create his own offense. a guy that could break down the defense, a special player. They already have Ben Simmons, who is an incredible playmaker, but Ben Simmons can't shoot. So, the three teams I really want to watch that I don't think have a chance to go to the finals next year, the 76ers, number one, because I think Ben Simmons is going to jump off the screen. He didn't play last year because of a foot injury. He didn't play his rookie year, but I think Ben Simmons is absolutely going to surprise the league. I watched him in the Summer League last year. The guy was incredible. So I want to watch the 76ers. I absolutely want to watch the Lakers. I'm crossing my fingers that the Lakers get Paul George this offseason, and that's selfish. The reason I'm really crossing my fingers about them getting Paul George, I just want to watch him play next year. I just want to see Lonzo Ball and Paul George build chemistry and maybe convince LeBron James to go over there after next season, because I don't think LeBron James will be there in Cleveland after next season when I think they're going to lose in the NBA Finals again. And the third team I want to watch, obviously, like I just told you guys, is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I really do think, Boston, it's funny, you see what Boston's doing. They're getting all these role players. They don't really have a bona fide superstar. Isaiah Thomas, 28 a game this year, but he's like a 5'9" point guard. That's not a bona fide superstar. He had a great superstar-type season. He's not a bona fide superstar at 5'9". So you see Boston, they get all these role players, and they continue to get just a little bit better, and they're really deep, and they're really well coached, similar to the Spurs. And then you see what Minnesota did. They just went out and got 3 stars. Credit to Scott Layden and Tom Thibodeau for pulling off getting Jimmy Butler for the 7th pick in the draft, Chris Dunn, a point guard that can't shoot, and Zach LaVine, who's a better dunker than an actual player. Credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that's a real team next year. All right, after the break, LaVar Ball gets the most disdain in the whole country. Out of anybody in our country right now that's a public figure, besides Donald Trump, LaVar Ball has to get the most disdain of anybody in the country. He said something last night. I absolutely love it. We'll be back after the break. I'm Matthew Jarecki. This is The Jerk. Welcome back to The Jerk. I'm Matthew Jarecki. I am The Jerk. It's Friday morning, 9:20. We are on 107.1 FM, KLJXLP, Flagstaff, Arizona. You can call into the show, 928-522-4554. We are in here Monday through Friday, every single weekday, every single week for you guys. It's the only sports radio talk show broadcasting out of Flagstaff, Arizona. So LaVar Ball got booed last night in the NBA draft. I think for LaVar Ball, if he didn't get booed, that would be more worrisome for me than him actually getting booed. LaVar Ball, I don't know how to explain this. I think we have to give LaVar Ball so much credit right now. Here's LaVar Ball last night at the draft talking about his son going to the Lakers. I love this clip.
You got LaVar here, and LaVar, you already got the Lakers hat.
I'm trying to tell you, I knew this was happening before it was happening.
When did you get this hat made?
When he was a baby. When he was a baby.
What's it like now that this has come to fruition for you? You've been talking about it for 9 months.
9 months? You're talking about 19, 20 years.
All right, 19, 20 years.
You had a microphone on me when I was talking about it.
What's it like right now that he is an LA Laker?
It's a wonderful feeling. But I already knew what was coming to him. I got 2 more boys. I got to come do the same thing 2 more years.
So you're going to get them to the Lakers too. How?
The big baller way.
I know they're ready.
Ball control.
Philly is starving for
How good is Lonzo Ball going to be for the LA Lakers?
Hey, I'm going to tell you what. Lonzo Ball is going to take the Lakers to the playoffs his first year. Come see me when he does. I'll have another hat on to say, I told you so.
So there's LaVar Ball giving an interview at the NBA draft last night about his son. God, there is so much disdain for LaVar Ball. I'm telling you guys, I cannot get enough of him. I think he's absolutely doing something great. There is some American thing. I talk about this Coors Light commercial attitude all the time that we partake in this country. Keep your head down. Eat a slice of humble pie. Respect your elders. Crack open a cold one after a hard day's work. Loyalty. Humility. And I think LaVar Ball is just one of those people, like myself, that just doesn't buy into all that BS. And it's just so authentic. And it's so in your face. And I get off on how much it ruffles everybody's feathers. I get off on it. This is a guy, LaVar Ball, who's willing to be hated, willing to be made fun of, and he's willing to do all that for like 9 months to accomplish something that should be impossible. He's competing with Nike and Under Armour for a space in the basketball shoe marketplace. Shouldn't we celebrate that? Isn't that as American as it gets? 8 months. 8 months of running his mouth and playing the American sports media like a fiddle in order to get his name out there, in order to get his brand out there. 8 months of that, and it all came to fruition. When he dropped the ZO2s for like $500, it was the front page of ESPN. He didn't pay for that. There was no advertising dollars going towards that. 8 months of making a fool of himself, quote unquote, even though I know LaVar Ball doesn't mind it. 8 months of being hated by every radio host in the country. And it all came to fruition. You know how much it cost to get a 30-second spot on ESPN during their, most important programming? It cost $30,000 to get a 30-second ad on ESPN. And LaVar Ball, in our internet age, was on the front page of ESPN with his ZO2s for $500 for like 2 days. He didn't spend a dime on that. And you know what else is perfect about this whole LaVar Ball thing? And you know what else is perfect about the whole country, just all the disdain we throw at LaVar Ball? His son, Lonzo Ball, is extremely soft-spoken, is extremely unselfish on the basketball court. A lot of people say that the son is often the exact opposite of his father. I know I am about my father in a lot of ways. Like, my dad completely buys into that Coors Light. Keep your head down. Eat a slice of humble pie mentality. My dad was raised in upstate New York, Polish background, be humble, don't show off, don't be cocky. That's how my dad was raised. I turned out the opposite of that. Lonzo Ball comes from a dad, outspoken, extremely arrogant, gets under people's skin. And it's funny because Lonzo Ball shares the ball on the court. He will pass before he shoots. He's very, he's underspoken. He's not outspoken. He's underspoken. Lonzo Ball doesn't say anything. I was watching an interview last night. Lonzo Ball on the phone with Luke Walton and Magic Johnson. Low-key. Honestly looked like he didn't want to be on the phone anymore. He's going to come into this Lakers organization and all he's going to do is make all the C's on their team into B's. And it's funny, I think without LaVar Ball, I don't think Lonzo Ball would have been drafted so high. I really don't. I think part of why Lonzo Ball was drafted so high is because he plays in to that Showtime Lakers mentality. Not that he's not good enough to go number 2, but think about if LaVar Ball didn't even exist. You would have a soft-spoken point guard that's a pass-first point guard heading out of the, I could see Josh Jackson who jumps off the television screen. I could see De'Aaron Fox who scored like 40 on Lonzo Ball's team. I could see them surpassing a soft-spoken Lonzo Ball in the number 2 slot in the draft if it wasn't for LaVar Ball going on 8 months of ESPN First Take, 8 months of radio shows, claiming he'd beat Michael Jordan one-on-one, claiming his son's better than Steph Curry. I think all of that played a big part in Lonzo Ball being the number 2 pick in the draft. And I think it's, all of this disdain for LaVar Ball, I get it. I get why you guys hate him. But I think part of it should be praised. Part of the fact that he was able to get the front page of ESPN for 2 days when he dropped his shoes, that marketing strategy should be praised. Be back after the break. I'm Matthew Jarecki. This is The Jerk. Welcome back to The Jerk. I'm Matthew Jarecki. I am The Jerk. We're joined now by Lance Hartzler. Basketball Nerd. Basketball Insider. He's the editor for the Lumberjack here at Northern Arizona University. He knows a ton of... When I have basketball questions, I called him up this morning to ask about some basketball questions.
Yeah, you woke me up early, man.
Well, that's why he's so valuable to the show. He gets up early for us. So, right off the bat, what was your favorite move in last night's draft?
Well, I mean, my favorite move was the obvious. The Timberwolves somehow getting Jimmy Butler for nothing. They traded a bunch of nickels for $1.
Hey, they still had a first-round pick, by the way.
Exactly.
Folks.
They still got the number 16 pick and drafted a good player in Justin Patton. Like, they drafted, in my mind, a better player with their pick than the pick they traded to the Bulls. They drafted Lauri Markkanen. Why? I don't know.
So, here's the deal with Lauri Markkanen, right? He's not very strong.
He's 7 feet tall, but he's basically Ryan Anderson, and you drafted that 7th overall when you have already said you want to re-sign Nikola Mirotic, who does the exact same thing as Lauri Markkanen.
Can you take my audience into Justin Patton? What kind of player is he going to be?
He's a pretty athletic, really good big, who for some reason a Bleacher Report writer compared him to Kristaps Porzingis, that weirded me out.
Because they're big white guys, huh?
No, he's not white.
What are we talking about here?
Justin Patton.
Oh, I was thinking of Lauri Markkanen. Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
No. Okay.
So Markkanen, he translates more as Ryan Anderson. Justin Patton, he's like that uber athletic big that could play with Karl Anthony Towns.
Okay.
Yeah, he plays above the rim, and rumor has it he can hit an outside shot.
So he'll come off the bench, obviously.
He will slot in as their backup big, for sure. Because it makes Gorgui Dieng, who's kind of plateaued, hasn't really done much, it makes him expendable.
So the Timberwolves get a guy that can come off the bench and contribute. And the Bulls got Chris Dunn, who flamed out pretty much.
He's a non-offensive, defensive-minded point guard. He's Tony Allen, maybe Marcus Smart.
And all of the Bulls need right now is somebody that can score. Who's going to be their top scorer next year?
If LaVine is healthy, if Wade plays the whole season, Wade, but I'm guessing Wade's going to get bought out. He's got $24 million of reason to stay with them unless they negotiate a buyout, and then he can go to Cleveland for free.
I've always wondered this. Cleveland obviously needs firepower. Dwayne Wade and LeBron James have been friends. Everybody knows this. Why is it just awkward for LeBron to call him up and say we need help? Why doesn't Dwayne Wade go over to Cleveland?
Oh, I'm sure after this, LeBron's in his ear saying, hey, take a buyout. Your team's going to win 12 games.
All right, here's my next question. Speaking of LeBron James. So Cleveland can't get, it looks like, Paul George. Obviously, they can't get Jimmy Butler. They're not going to win the finals this upcoming year, I think we both assume. They're probably going to be in the finals. LeBron James, I always say, big game hunter. He doesn't mess around with not winning finals. He doesn't mess around with that. What does he do after this year?
Man, I don't know, because Dan Gilbert is wasting a second chance at a LeBron era. The owner of the Cavaliers, Dan Gilbert, ruined the first LeBron era by driving them out of town, and he's about to ruin the rare chance of a second by firing David Griffin, the former GM.
I have a huge problem with this, and we're going to keep Lance around probably for the last part of this show, so don't worry, guys. I I have a huge problem with this because they didn't really fire David Griffin, but you knew as Dan Gilbert going into these negotiations, there was a certain price for David Griffin, and he was thinking about walking away. You knew that before you went into these negotiations. So you let him walk away. Now you have nobody to negotiate for a guy like Jimmy Butler, for a guy like Paul George. I mean, you have David Griffin's underlings, but they don't have the experience that Griffin has.
No. Basically, Dan Gilbert let David Griffin go too late. Not just with the trade negotiations that he was doing, but with also to give Griffin another shot at another job. After he got fired or mutually parted ways, the other jobs that were open, like Milwaukee, like Orlando, filled. Griffin could have done wonders in Milwaukee. Oh my gosh. Give him Antetokounmpo and Jabari Parker. He could do wonders with that team.
And now David Griffin out of a job. Do you think LeBron James, after this next season, do you think he goes out west to L.A. if he sees Lonzo Ball's playing well, getting everybody on that team 5 more shots a game, Paul George playing well over there? Do you think LeBron James considers going out west?
I wouldn't be surprised. I know he's going to consider it because LeBron's always considered every option. So I wouldn't be surprised. I hope he doesn't. I would love to see him stay in Cleveland, but I highly doubt he will retire in Cleveland. He will retire somewhere warm, whether it be the Clippers, whether it be the Lakers, maybe somehow, somewhere he ends up in Miami. I don't know.
See, I struggle with this because I hear these Clippers. I hear this Clippers talk, right?
Yeah.
And he's got a close relationship with Jerry West. But the Clippers roster right now, man, it is 10 years behind.
It would take a lot of hoops to jump through to get him to the Clippers. The Lakers is the trendy one because it's easy. They dumped Mozgov's contract when they traded Brook Lopez and had to dump D'Angelo Russell. Gosh, that trade was bad. Just to dump Mozgov's contract. So now they're opening up cap space, but it's still just a lot of hope. It's a lot of speculation that we just don't know.
Yeah, and it looks like right now, it honestly looks like Minnesota could turn in to the second best team in the West in a couple years.
Oh, very well they can. With Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Ricky Rubio, if Andrew Wiggins and Cat can keep developing the way they have the last 2 and 3 years, oh my gosh, that would be a defensive monster.
And this is my argument heading into this year. Jimmy Butler grew up under Tom Thibodeau, right?
Yes.
He grew up under Tom Thibodeau. He's got that ego and leadership of a star player. Now, some people say his ego hurt him in Chicago. I say he comes back to the coach that developed him as a player, and he can get these guys who had trouble buying in last year, he can get them to buy in this year.
Absolutely. His ego didn't hurt him in Chicago. The freaking front office did. Gar Forman, and Paxson are the worst front office in the league right now.
Woo.
They are bad. It is awful. They traded Jimmy Butler for nothing after saying they won't trade him.
All right, I got to ask you about this because you just claimed that Chicago was the worst front office in the league. Can you tell me about Phil Jackson, please?
Oh, man, he's gunning for that spot. See, he hasn't actually traded the player yet. He kept saying, I'm going to trade Porzingis, I'm going to trade Porzingis. Garpax basically said, hold our Chicago dogs, we're going to go trade Jimmy Butler.
Well, okay, I heard something very interesting about this Phil Jackson thing. I heard a theory from, Ryan Russillo, right?
Yep.
I love his show, and I check out his show. Ryan said that he talked to an NBA executive who told him Porzingis might have wanted out, knew that he could get under Phil's skin if he skipped the exit interview, and completely played Phil, skipping that exit interview, saying, listen, you can go use me as trade bait if you want. I want out of this dysfunctional organization anyways. So I just, nobody actually knows what's going through Phil Jackson's head.
Oh, no one knows. The dude's crazy.
But the Knicks are...
It's the Knicks.
It's just one of those things in sports. I actually come on here and I try to explain things that are happening in sports. I need to look to other people for explanations about Phil Jackson. I don't I just have never understood that situation.
The way I see it, it's the Knicks. They've been the most dysfunctional franchise the last 15 years. They've beaten the Kings for most dysfunctional, and that's saying something. That's how bad the Knicks have been. But we don't really address it as much because it's the Knicks. It's New York. It's big city. We will still root for them to be good, even though they won't be.
All right, after the break, we're going to keep Lance around. We're going to jump into the basketball logistics. Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz, what's going on with the 76ers? I'm going to ask Lance, who are his top 3 regular season teams he wants to watch next year? And also, what does he think about the Celtics' Jason Tatum pick? Be back after the break. I'm Matthew Jarecki. We have Lance on right now, Lance Hartzler. This is The Jerk. Welcome back to The Jerk. I'm Matthew Jarecki. I am The Jerk, joined by our weekly basketball insider, Lance Hartzler. He's an editor for Northern Arizona University's The Lumberjack. It's our newspaper here. Lance knows a ton about basketball. I just fire off questions at Lance, and he answers all of them. Like, no research done. So it's great. We love having him on. So, Lance, we saw LaVar Ball interviewed last night. He said Zoe is going to take them to the playoffs.
No, he won't. No, he won't.
Okay, what if he gets Paul George?
Okay, if somehow Paul George makes it, they'll get close, but the West is still loaded. That team won't make the playoffs. They'll be a 10th or 9th. The West is so good. With established stars, with established teams, they're not making playoffs.
Okay, so let's just squish that one. That was kind of like, I don't know, man. I just love LaVar Ball.
He's a marketing genius.
Okay, he's a marketing genius.
I don't like him, but he knows what he's doing.
Can we just talk
Good
about
for
this?
him.
I looked this up. 30 seconds for ESPN's, premier advertising is $30,000.
Yeah, and he gets free advertising just by getting on mic and talking crap.
He gets on the mic. He gets the front page of ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN gives him a mic and he just goes.
Yeah.
I was tired of it watching the draft.
It's kind of a mutualistic relationship because ESPN needs that fodder during a boring NBA season, which this last season was pretty boring.
Yeah.
I think next season, though, who are your top 3 regular season teams that aren't necessarily going to make a deep playoff run, but you just want to watch them develop?
So, number 1, I want to watch Philly. I want to see Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid healthy, Markelle Fultz. I want to see what this team can do. I want to see how they play.
Me too.
Number 2, I want to see how Minnesota does after this trade, how they progress. Because, Minnesota, they're going to be fun. This team's going to play defense. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and they're going to shoot mid-range jumpers because that's what Jimmy and Andrew Wiggins like to do.
Okay, do you see Minnesota as a team that can win a playoff series right now?
It depends on who they match up with, but right now, yes, I think they can if they make the playoffs. They have to make the right strides defensively, and they have to develop correctly, but I think they can. Absolutely.
Right. Number 3, who's the 3rd team you want to watch this year?
It sounds awful, but it's got to be the Warriors. That team's so good. You always got to watch this team. You're like, they're on, you got to see what they're going to do.
See, you know what?
Because I also want to see them lose, so that's even more thing. I want to watch them just to see if a team can beat them.
My top 3 teams are very similar to yours. 76ers.
Yeah.
I think Ben Simmons is going to surprise a lot of people because a lot of people haven't seen him play.
I hope he does. I hope he's good.
Oh, I personally, I think he's going to jump off the screen. Obviously, he's not a great shooter at this point.
Like my favorite thing to watch next year is the race for Rookie of the Year.
Interesting, because he's
loaded.
technically a rookie.
Yeah, it's loaded. Markelle, Ben, Lonzo, Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum. Anyone in the top 12 has a legit shot outside of Lauri Markkanen.
And we're forgetting De'Aaron Fox.
And De'Aaron Fox.
We're forgetting him because he's going to be in the dumpster fire that is the Sacramento Kings.
The dumpster fire threw some fire extinguisher on that. They had a good draft.
Okay, tell us about the Kings draft real quick.
So they drafted Fox, Justin Jackson, and they took a flyer on
I didn't
Harry.
know they got Justin Jackson.
And they took a flyer on Harry Giles. They traded the number 10 pick for 2 later picks around 15 and 20. They drafted Justin at 15, Harry Giles at 20. They had a sneaky good draft.
Interesting over there. So
yeah, they're going to be bad.
Yeah, they're going to be
But they
bad.
have solid players that fit together.
The Kings are kind of like, if it's a Thursday night there's nothing to do midwinter, I will put on a Kings game to see what De'Aaron Fox is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Just see if Buddy Hield's hitting threes. De'Aaron Fox is playing defense. He gets to play Lonzo Ball 4 times a year. Make his life miserable.
Okay, so Jason Tatum is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. What can he bring to the table for the Celtics? I tend to believe he's kind of a poor man's Paul George in the way that he plays.
Yeah.
I tend to believe throughout the year he's going to get a lot of minutes. I think he's going to get great coaching over there with Brad Stevens. And I think he can make a real significant impact heading into the Eastern Conference Finals as their second option. Because, they get very one-dimensional with Isaiah Thomas at times.
They can. Jason, they drafted him because they wanted that other creator. They think he can be that other elite scorer. I don't. I don't like Jason Tatum. I've said it here a couple times. I'm going to stick by it. He is nothing more than TJ Warren.
Okay, explain that to my audience. What does that mean?
He is a inefficient mid-range chucker who doesn't play defense. With an inefficient 3-ball. I watched him at Duke. He changes his form on his jumper. It's not consistent. And he doesn't handle the ball as well as you would like an offensive creator too. He doesn't have a good dribble. He has great footwork, impeccable footwork, but he can't dribble very well, so it doesn't help much.
So he's going to need to be almost a spot-up shooter.
He's got to be set up. I don't think he's going to be able to create his own that much as people think. And
wow.
I have Celtics fans. My assistant sports editor, Cade Gillis, is a big-time Celtics fan. He compares him to Paul Pierce.
But he's not that defender.
No.
He's not that defender.
He's not that good. And at most, to me, he's old, so current ISO Joe Johnson.
See, I went on the show, okay, I'm not as down on Jason Tatum as you are, although I respect your opinion about him. I went on yesterday for the opening segment, and I said, I want Boston to take Josh Jackson because I think he creates the most problems for LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah. I think the reason they didn't is because he wouldn't work out for him. And I believe, remember about a week ago, he got a promise from a team in the top 5. Clearly, it was the Phoenix Suns.
Okay, so
he wanted to go there.
And for our local Phoenix Suns fans, because we are in Arizona right now.
And I'm a Suns fan.
And Lance follows, I think Lance's dream job is to be a beat writer for the Suns. So, Lance, what does Josh bring to the Suns? And what are the Suns going to be next year?
So, Suns aren't going to be that good next year, and that's fine. But they actually finally have another glimmer of hope. Josh Jackson might be the best draft pick they've had since Devin Booker. He is the versatile wing defender they don't have. He is uber athletic. He brings a flair of just aggressiveness. He has 2 chips on each shoulder. Mm-hmm. He's going to be mad. He said it himself. He's going to make other teams pay for passing on him. He's going to be fun because he fits well next to Devin Booker and the TJ Warren that I don't like, but Suns love him, so they'll play him together. Josh will fit well as a secondary creator for Devin Booker, so Booker can just score because Josh can pass similarly to a guard.
Yeah, Josh, you watch him at Kansas, and he's not a smooth offensive player.
But he's just so athletic.
He jumps. It's very similar to me offensively to Russell Westbrook. Not that they do the same things,
no,
but that they just power their way to baskets.
I like that comparison. That's a fun offensive comparison. I like that.
So obviously, the Suns for the last 8 years.
Gosh, almost 10 now.
And what do they do? It's not a huge free agent destination right now.
No.
Devin Booker's looks like he's going to be a star.
Oh, Suns fans love him. We think he's going to be the next great thing. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good.
I think we need another. I don't think he's going to be a great number 1 option. He's a very great 2 option. We need a great number 1, and that's going to come. Just give it time. I think it's coming.
All right, so that's Lance Hartzler, basketball insider. We love having him on. I will be back on Monday. Hopefully, over the weekend, we get some Paul George news. We're all rooting for Paul George to be in LA next year. The saddest thing in sports, and we've talked about this before, is a top 10 player in the middle of nowhere on a team that has no direction. That's the saddest thing. That's Andrew Luck for the last 5 years in the NFL. So, and it's funny because it's the same state. So we're just going to pray over the weekend that Paul George gets traded. It was a great night last night. Great show today. Thanks again, Lance. We will be back on Monday. And by the way, you can catch our podcast on any of my social media accounts, at The Jerk Show on Twitter, The Jerk with Matthew Jarecki on Facebook. You can go to our YouTube page, The Jerk with Matthew Jarecki. It's all the same. Be back on Monday. It's been The Jerk.